everybody. Welcome back to season 2 on Between the Notes podcast. We've got a good one for you today. We're going to talk about, this title is a little bit obscure, but it came to me in thinking about this musical theater piece. How could I ever know? Right?
How could I ever know?
Right. It's so beautiful. It's so touching. It's a little bit sappy, but it always got me choked up. But really what we're here to talk about is, part of this, and Wes and I were discussing this before we pressed record, know, that the first part of this could even be part of the singer's handbook. But it's really about transitions, right? It's about transitions. You're going to start in there on when should I start taking singing more seriously? When should I consider studying this in undergrad? When should I, should I continue after undergrad, or should I pivot to another kind of focus for your career? And then we're going to get into some stuff about teachers and managers and all that kind of stuff. But I'm really looking forward to this episode. Bud, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, I think I know that you have had an opportunity to mentor a number of different young singers. And I think that the questions that we get more often than not are just what you said, right? Well, how do you know when it's time to get a manager? Well,
Right.
How do you know when it's time to switch voice teachers?
Right.
How do you know, should I major in vocal performance, or should I
Sure.
do a Bachelor of Music in Education?
Should I
Whatever
go
it is.
Yeah. Should I go to a big school? Should I go to a small school? Should I take out
Right.
these loans? Should I not?
Should
it's
I
gonna-
audition for this show or this? All of these
Absolutely.
things. And I think to this point, right? How could I ever know? I don't know. Well, I think you have to surround yourself with a team of people that you trust.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you always ask those questions. And so today, what we hope to do is to be able to answer some of those, or at least give you some ideas about how you can go about sort of pursuing the answers that you may have on your own,
Sure.
So let's start with this, when to take singing more seriously, right? Like I remember when I was a high school student, my mom forced me to join choir my freshman year.
Right.
And I in junior high, I was playing football and, having fun.
Right.
And she said, well, listen, you have to take a fine arts credit in high school, so you're going to join choir. And if you hate it, you don't have to do it again, but I think you'll really like it. And so
Yeah.
sure enough, I did, and I loved it. And, but it was sort of her insistence step by step, right? Freshman
Right.
year, I just sang in the choir. Sophomore year, she was like, you're going to sing a solo in the solo and ensemble competition, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
sure.
I learned Bois épais, the all your shades. Of course, I sang it in English. I didn't sing the French.
Yeah.
But then slowly, the junior year, she's like, you have to audition for All-State Choir this year. And I'm like, all right. But it wasn't until that experience where I made the Texas All-State Choir my junior year of high school that I started to go, wait a minute, only good people get into this. Am I good?
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
actually
like,
pretty good at this,
yeah,
right?
it's like
Yeah.
you sort of discover things along the way, but it's like, well, how?
Right.
Oh, maybe I should. And the first thing was like, should I start taking private voice lessons? Yeah, you idiot. You should start taking some lessons, figuring out how you can get better.
Isn't there a good story with your stepdad there that I'm kind of like half remembering?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think when I was in high school choir, I had a lot of friends. I actually remember this guy named Joe Mattingly,
Okay.
who made me feel so welcomed into this group, because here's a dude, my freshman year, he was a senior or
Okay. Sure.
maybe he was a junior my freshman year, but he played on the varsity football team. And this dude was a mammoth of a guy. Like he played
Yeah.
on the offensive line, and just a super cool guy. And because I thought, well, this is going to be silly. I'm a football guy and I'm joining choir. And immediately I met Joe, and I just felt so at home. But because of that, of course, I became friends with all the old, because it was like a men's choir. So even as a freshman, you're thrown in with all the juniors and seniors and,
Yeah,
and
sure.
whatever. And so I quickly became friends with everybody, and probably talked a little bit too much, as one might be, willing to do.
All right.
And like you said, my choir director was a man who eventually became my stepfather. And he's been a part of my life, though, since elementary school, because when my mom was starting out teaching junior high choir at one of the feeder schools that went to my high school, he was
Mhm.
always helping her out with different things. And so he was always in our circle,
Right. Sure.
And I do remember him one time taking me outside the choir room, and he threw me up against the wall, and he was like, now listen, if you would, quit talking and focus on what we're doing, you might actually learn something and do something with that amazing voice of yours. And I was
Oh
like,
wow. Yeah.
me? I haven't, but so
Right.
yeah. Case in point, I should say, Yeah. How do you know when you're supposed to start doing these things? And so when the choir director throws you up against a
Sure.
wall and tells you to quit talking and focus more on singing because you have a great voice,
Right.
maybe they're onto
There you
something.
go. You audition for, the school musical or a
Yeah.
musical at a what a community theater or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Hey, if you get a part, well, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
You can carry a tune, and maybe can move well on stage, and all these things that are important.
I
And
do think that there's something that everyone should just keep in the back of their mind,
uh-huh.
which is not funny enough. It's not something that I've really thought about until recently, is this
Okay.
toxic positivity. Because,
Oh,
while we
sure.
have always been aware of the toxic negativity and the
Right.
toxicity sometimes of gossip and rumors and all the things that can come
Sure.
along with this, I do think that there's an issue of toxic positivity. No matter what anyone does. Oh my God, that was amazing. Oh
That
my
was
God, you sounded
so
so great. That was
good.
so
Oh
good.
my god. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, there's a difference between being encouraging
Right.
and being, I think over time, especially I think now that you're in academia and you're giving studio classes,
Yeah.
I felt that one of my responsibilities, and I felt that because one of my teachers, when I was a student in school, taught us how to have a critical ear, what it is
Mm.
that we're listening for,
Right.
and to be able to, yes, of course, make a comment in studio class about a positive thing that we felt like this singer who just sang did, but maybe also come up with a constructive criticism that might have something to do with what you have recently been learning in your lessons, or just as a gentle reminder. But getting back to this, it's just like I think that as you're pursuing this and trying to figure out, okay, this person encouraged me this person encouraged me that. Just keep that idea of toxic positivity in the back of your mind, and just making sure that like the people who are super encouraging or the over the top compliments, it's almost like you got to weed out the bottom and weed out the top, and somewhere in the middle there might be some truth.
Right. I mean, maybe, your parents might be a little bit biased.
Yeah,
Maybe,
your boyfriend, your
yeah,
girlfriend, your
maybe
yeah,
your
exactly.
teacher at school might be a little bit like, inclined towards what you're talking about there. But I think if you go outside of that to like just a theater camp or something like
Sure,
that, they're going
sure.
to try and give the best students of those, 30 or 40 kids who might be there. And if you're in the top 5 of the best out of 30
That's
or
a sign.
40, that's a sign.
Yeah,
There's your sign. That's how you can know.
right.
So yeah, so we do that, and then I think these are the first steps down that path of should I pursue this as a major, I guess, in
Yeah.
undergrad is what I'm
Yeah,
talking
you're
about.
right. Vocal performance major versus
Yeah,
bachelor of music education major. A lot of
right.
people, I remember when I was doing it, mine was, well, you want to have something to fall back on. And then I remember hearing somebody said, like, well, if you're always pursuing your life with, like, well, I'm going to probably fail at this, so I got to have something to fall back on. They were
Right.
like, no, 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 no. If you're going to do it, go and do it. And I think that was sort of the energy that I kind of
Yeah, I mean, I
took
think
with
if you
that. But
love music, we have a lot. We had a lot at Rider at Westminster, and we have a lot here of double major music, vocal performance, and education.
right,
Because I do know, I mean, I was told the same kind of thing that you have to be like a kind of unicorn voice if you're going to put all your eggs in those baskets. And I was like,
right,
well, I don't know.
right.
And even
How do
still,
you know?
yeah, exactly. I went to school with a guy who had a great tenor voice, wonderful guy, super smart, did his undergrad in vocal performance, and then decided to study for the law school, the LSAT, and
Yeah,
then decided to go to law school and has a wonderful career as a lawyer, but also supports the local classical music scene. So I mean, that's great.
yeah.
These are all possibilities.
My wife, Christina, she did a Bachelor of Music and Vocal Performance, had the highest scholarship that was granted, was a part, I mean, we met through the National Opera Company because she was
Right.
selected to take part in this Nico Castell Scenes program, and now works as a director of human resources. So, I mean, I think that she decided her senior year she wasn't going to pursue it. So I think, you know, um, there's always different twists and turns and different decisions to be made. But I think that, when you're trying to figure out for yourself what it is that you want to do, yes, there needs to be that external validation from the people that matter, so that you know that, like, okay, well, if I were to do this, this is actually going to be a
Sure.
good decision.
Right.
But you've also got to look internally and truly unfold what you're passionate about or not, because it's this idea of like, if you don't love it more than anything, and if you're not passionate about it, well, find something that you are. passionate about, you
Yeah,
know?
sure, because that will, you will be motivated to study and work and get better at things.
Sure.
I mean, in some ways, and this happened to me, right? Because I had only sung peripherally through high school, but I mean, I got leads and stuff like that. But I wanted to be a conductor. I wanted to be a Broadway conductor, so I
Right.
wasn't really interested in doing this. And when I got the scholarship to study singing, I'm like, well, you kind of have to give this a shot. And I was like, well.
Mhm.
I loved singing, but I knew that I was not the best at languages. Languages did not come super easy to me, and opera is all about singing in other languages. At least in undergrad, a lot of that is there. And so I didn't, I didn't like jump in feet first with it, but then the more I learned about the technical aspect of singing, then I fell in love with that. And
Yeah.
that's what made me I think just always get better and to just keep pursuing singing. And there were different motivating factors at different times in my development. Some of it was I have to pay off these loans, some of it was because I have to do this, some of it is like I'm going to try and sing, enough years of a career to pay that back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the one thing that I never that was always a piece of the puzzle was I'm going to work hard and I'm going to do this. I don't care if my colleagues are better at languages and can memorize faster than I can. That doesn't mean that I can't do it. So I'm going to put in the time and I'm going to do it. And I did. And
Yeah.
there you go. Hard
Yeah,
work is key.
exactly. Hard work is key. And I think that, at the end of the day, you're in charge of your destiny, right? I mean, you can
Yeah.
have people telling you what they think you should do or whatever, but at the end of the day, you've got to make a decision about what you want to do. And I think we're just trying to make sure that you're making an educated decision based on our experiences and the things that we've sort of figured out over the years. But
Yeah, and I think we got into this in an earlier episode, but like not everybody who studies vocal performance wants to be having a career at the Met or everywhere else. That doesn't
right.
just because I mean maybe you shoot for that, but if it doesn't happen, I think if you love music, you'll still be happy being a choir director, being a church musician, being a choral singer, being
Yeah.
a music teacher, a voice teacher, piano teacher, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that that's pretty much kind of, just kind of keeping the end game in mind is and being okay with that, you
Yeah, and
know.
keep checking in with yourself. Like, what are your aspirations? Like, what is it you really want
Sure.
to do? What is it, after you've had this experience? All right, if you've never sung a leading role in an opera before and you're thinking, I want to be an opera singer. Okay, well, then you get cast in a leading role and you have that experience.
Right.
Is that making you want to rethink your choices? Or is that like, oh my
Sure.
God, this is amazing. I want to do more and more and more and more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So, just keep checking in with yourself and asking those questions of like, okay, where am I right now? Similar to these Uta Hagen questions that we've been encouraging everyone
Sure.
to think about as they're preparing their roles and how to learn music. Who am I? What am I doing? How am I going to get it? And what are the hurdles that stand in my way?
Right.
I mean, ask those questions for your own real life, and
Yeah,
figure out where you are and what it is that you would like to see you do next.
exactly.
And there's all sorts of complications that can arise, right? So eh, based on where your partner wants to see you or where your family supports or doesn't support, or, there's all these different external things.
Yeah.
Um, but let's say that you have chosen to pursue this singing career and you have, majored in music. Some of the other questions that we sometimes get is like, well, when is it, how do you know when it's time to switch teachers? Right.
Right. That's a big
And
one. Sure.
I think a lot of different universities have policies about how to switch from one teacher to another teacher. But, I think you and I have talked extensively about the importance of, well, just because you have a bad lesson doesn't mean it's time to switch. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
you've got to give a teacher at least probably 2 years of consistent lessons before you make a decision that this approach and this sort of, whether it's like the way that they are as a teacher or the information that they're giving you, just isn't working for you, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I think certainly in your undergrad and probably in your master's too, that's a good rule of thumb. Right. I think once you get out, it could be a little bit different because you will have had probably, let's assume you would have had at least two teachers if you did a master's and an undergrad at two different places. Maybe you
Right.
do them all at the same place, stay with the same teacher the whole time. Fine if that teacher's working. Great. But the point is that at that point, you probably will have had enough. If you go to a summer program and you work with some teachers, you will have had enough different kind of inputs
Right.
that, somebody maybe likes a brighter, maskier sound. Somebody wants a more up and back sound. Somebody's like trying to encourage you to keep your lyrics low, but maybe in a little bit too muscular, aggressive way. Any of these things and all these things, you'll start to realize, okay. So when you go take I still think 6 months, even after masters, you need to give a voice teacher 6 months
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
working every week, because learning the vocabulary, learning the exercises and all this kind of different way, and the philosophy behind. I mean, Steve Smith used to give his spiel. I'm sure he still does in some version, or maybe he just says, "Hey, read my book." But the point is that kind of gives his philosophy
Yeah.
of
Up front.
yeah, and I think that that's great, because that
Yeah.
way you can think, okay, well, maybe I don't agree with this, or it's different than what I've done, but this guy is a reputable teacher, so let me see what he can do with my voice, and that's
Sure.
exactly what I think everybody should do when you're considering a new teacher. It's not always feasible, and I know it's
Yeah.
not cheap,
Right. Right. It's not
but
cheap. But I
so
think
is, yeah, so is not, wasting 2 years of voice lessons. That's not cheap either, to realize you've gone in the wrong direction.
you got that right.
So
I think that oftentimes too, what people will initially take as, oh no, I've made a mistake. This new teacher is telling me that I need to do this, 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 and this. And that's so different than that's not the same thing that you used to say. And it's like,
right,
yeah, yeah, it is. I just use different words, but it's just a
exactly.
different way of saying a similar thing, or a very similar approach that is, so it can be a challenging sort of tricky puzzle to navigate. Like you said, learning the verbiage and learning the different approaches.
Yeah,
But the thing I always remind people of is like, I don't know any voice teachers that are out to like ruin people. You do know what I mean? I
no,
think
no,
everybody
no,
has the same
sure.
goal in mind of helping whoever's standing in front of them to become a better singer.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a
Um,
voice teacher, you are probably a singer. I mean, I would hope. I shouldn't always
right.
say that,
Or a
but I mean,
pedagogue.
you're a pedagogue. But I mean, but you're a singer, right? You don't have to have
Yeah.
a career, but
Right.
you know what it is to live with a voice
Yeah.
year after year, week after week, decade after decade, so that you kind of understand from the inside out. I think some of these people who are more coaches and then get into saying, I think this is a little bit problematic, but again, I'm not throwing shade on anybody
No, no, of course.
necessarily, but I just love when a singer who loves singing and loves the idea of technique and is fascinated with this, then decides to become a teacher of singing.
Right.
And then that person imparts that knowledge down. And like, just to say what you said, I don't think anybody, unless you're really like, I don't know, a narcissist or like a masochist or something, where you're trying to like go out and actively ruin voices because somebody ruined your
No.
voice or something. I
No.
I, I don't think there are very many of those.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I would give yourself some patience and some time and
yeah,
some advocacy. I mean, if you've got a question, don't be afraid to ask. I think that's something that for whatever reason, it's like, you know, an intimidation or something, but I just encourage you to ask questions to your teacher. If there are questions that are left unanswered, so that you feel like you have all of the information that you need. So, you know, always be asking when there are misunderstandings or assumptions, like, just so I'm clear, I want to make sure when you say da 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 da, da, do you
hmm
mean blah 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 blah?
right.
Because very easily the teacher will be like, no, 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 sorry,
In fact, it's the opposite of that. Oh,
exactly.
whoops.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So,
Well, I think that's a good segue into the whole management thing, right? I mean, if you don't have your technique in order and you don't feel like you can consistently sing at your, 85 to 95% range, then
right.
you're probably not ready to be having
A
you
career.
know, and auditions with a manager,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Because I remember they used to say, maybe when we were coming out, you need a manager when you have a career worth managing,
Right.
right? When you've got enough contracts that need negotiations, when you need somebody to trying to get you a release to do whatever or whatever. So I'd say that's but increasingly now managers are on the panels for competitions,
Hmm.
so they will get to hear the kind of crop of singers for those couple of years that are rising to the top, whether it's through the Met competition
Yeah.
or any of the New York competitions or the Houston Grand and
Yeah.
Zachary competition, all these competitions there. And so I think, when a manager comes up to you and says, "Hi, congratulations," I think that's a good sign that they're kind of like flirting with the idea of
Oh
just
yeah.
trying to see what's your personality like. because again, it's all about the marketing, and they've got to, they're there to make a commission on you as an artist going out and singing well and being able to be sold. And I don't, it's probably not great to think about yourself as a product, but I think that a lot of managers definitely think about their singers as, this is the product I'm selling, and
Yeah.
how can I sell it? And how can I make my quota? How can I do this? The kind of days, there are managers like our good buddy Alex Fletcher, who's really, knows how to take a young singer and not just manage their calendar, but
But
also
build a career.
build their career and lead them through repertoire that is appropriate and will be healthy. But that's not always the case. It's not always the case.
Yeah, I think, so again, going back to this idea of how could I ever know, right? It's like, well, how do I know when it's time to switch? And I think that they're always,
Sure.
whether we're talking about voice teachers or managers, um, or any person of your team,
Yeah.
you do want to be careful of hopping around too much.
Oh, for sure.
I think that when you're seeing uh, that there is an issue, if there's a disagreement, if they're constantly pushing you one way, and you're like, everything that I believe and am told and am experiencing is going this way, well, sure, then it might be time for a change. But I think you do have to give, the rule of thumb that I was always told was like, give a manager 3 years.
Yeah.
So you sign with a manager. Back in the day, it used to be a typical 3-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
Certain managers don't do contracts at all. Some of them do like an initial 2-year contract. It just depends on what they do.
Right.
But when you're considering how all the opera companies, like, what are we in the 25 26 season right now,
Yeah.
that just started, companies, they've already cast this season years ago, or
Sure.
at least last year,
At
depending on the
least, yeah.
size of the house or whatever. So 26, 27 more than likely is already cast, or at least certain things are still being filled in, over the course of this next, let's say, 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
But so then, if you're just now starting to work with a manager, they're not going to get you anything for this season unless it's like a last minute jump in.
Right.
And maybe next season might not be much, just an introduction to these different companies that might spawn, a smaller regional company that does need
Sure.
to find funding before they're able to cast for a last minute thing for next season.
Right.
But really, it's that 2 years down the road that you're going to start to hopefully see, like, oh, okay, this is what they were able to have happen, or to help put me in the lineup. So
Right.
you do need to give it some time before you just assume like, nope, this isn't working. I'm not getting enough attention, or whatever it may be.
Right. So let's say that you're doing that, and maybe all of a sudden, you're going through like a dry spell, or you've got, these kind of like 3-month holes in your calendar or something like that, or your summer's off or something.
Right.
Is it time to kind of reassess and maybe think, should I now? I do kind of think you should kind of have a backup plan, plan B, kind of, at least if it's not on the side burner, it's in a folder over here, maybe in the fridge, to where, or the freezer, to where you're just like, if this doesn't work out, what am I going to do? Especially when you're in your like mid-20s and you've got bills to pay, is essentially what I'm
Or,
talking
or
about.
or another way to think of it and frame it, which is what we've kind of done on this program with
Yeah.
interviews with like Dana Varga, right? It's like,
Right.
what is the correlating career that's going to be happening alongside, so that when there are 3-month breaks or 2-month break or 8-week break or whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Right.
you're able to still make money, and whether that is a variety of different pursuits. I do think that it's smart to be able to keep those, what would you call it, bullet points on a
Yeah.
resume,
Right.
active and in the forefront, so that you are able to still earn while you're pursuing this career that might take a little time. you
Right.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. So, all right. So that's one road that can happen. Another one is
Sure.
maybe your voice changes at 35 or 40 or 45 or
Yeah.
whenever. I mean, voices, if they're trained in a healthy manner, tend to get fuller. It doesn't necessarily mean heavier, but rounder.
Yeah.
Take on some more of that. And so yeah, so I think that I mean, you've done some rep changes where
Well,
you were,
sure. I
you
mean, I
know,
started out this career singing a ton of Handel and Mozart and
right,
Bellini,
right.
lighter, just like sort of light lyric baritone
Yeah.
repertoire. And I remember my former manager, asking me one day, she's like, darling, how's your Je m'appelle? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I've never sung. You said, well, you should take a look at it. Next thing I know, I sang an audition for Spate Jenkins at Seattle Opera, and boom, he
Right.
hired me to sing my first Verdi opera. And since then, it became more Verdi and heavier Puccini like Scarpia. And so, yeah, I mean, I think over the course of someone's career, there is sort of a building. It's been a few years now, but when I was
Yeah.
doing my other show, Under the Hood, I had a wonderful conversation with Christine Gerke talking about how when she first got started in the career, she was singing a lot of Handel and lighter, Mozart or whatever. Took a little bit of time, came back singing all this Strauss and Wagner, right? It was like
Right.
it was this incredible developing voice, right? And so I think again, how do I know when it's time to, it's like, well, again, you surround yourself with an incredible team of people who are going to be honest with you. And most importantly, you've got to be honest with yourself of how things are feeling and and being open, right? Being open to the suggestion of, hey, have you looked at this or have you tried this? What do you think about
Sure.
this?
And
Because I
again,
think it can
yeah, your manager and your teacher should be weighing in on that as well. Watch
100%.
it. Teachers might have a tendency, and managers for that matter, because usually the bigger the rep, the more money you can make.
Sure.
But you might make more money, but you're going to make it for a shorter period of time if you
Maybe,
don't do it in the right way.
maybe.
So here's one that might be it's kind of in line with what we were talking about the teachers earlier.
Yeah.
But what if your technique kind of hits like you kind of hit a roof, or you get you're kind of there's a lid on things, figuratively maybe, and actually literally,
Yeah.
and you're either losing top or you're losing middle, because either the repertoire or maybe the technique or the whatever. um what are your thoughts on that, bud? Because I know we were with Steve Smith kind of at the same time. You had maybe
Yeah.
another year before, and then we both
Right.
left him about the same time when you went to Steve King and when I went to Bill Schumann at AVA.
Yeah.
And we're still there, what is it, 17 years later?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really singing, but Bill's the guy I go to and ask,
Sure.
advice for and such.
Sure.
So talk a little bit about that for you, what it was like, and why you did that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, I will say that it's so important to have people in your life that will be honest with you. It's
Yeah.
like from the day that I met you, you and I have pretty much been there for each other and
Oh
are
yeah.
able to have those conversations of like, I don't know, dude.
Right.
This is the feedback that I'm getting from the general director of the house, or this is the feedback that I'm getting from my manager, and I don't
Sure.
know. For me, there are so many things. I mean, specifically to answer your question, right?
Yeah.
There are so many things about Stephen Smith's teaching who I respect and use in my own teaching to this day.
Same.
I just think the world of him as a person and as a technician, and talk about someone who teaches people how to sing healthily. I mean, it's just
Sure.
it's an incredible thing. For me, though, what I found myself getting into the unwanted habit of doing was overblowing.
Mm.
I was actually finding a little bit too much abduction in my chords as opposed to
Hmm.
adduction. And because of that, I was losing core to my sound and I wasn't really on my body in the way that I feel like in this repertoire that I was kind of getting myself into,
Sure.
it really needed. And so
Hmm.
I had worked with him for about 8.5 years at that point,
Oh yeah,
and
long time. Wow.
yeah, and so I just thought, and I remember giving him the feedback, like this is what they're saying, and he's like, well, just make sure that you're, still, refining the vowel in the right way. And I was like, I know, yeah, I'm
Right.
absolutely thinking
Right.
of that,
Right.
And so, of course, I initially went to him and I was like, here's the feedback. What should I do? And he was telling me the answer, and I was like, yep, I have been doing that. And so I thought, well, I wonder what it would be like, because I had managers saying, I think you need to study with, or I think you might want to have a
Mm-hmm.
lesson with, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, all right. So I started exploring that idea based on the team that I had around me and their encouragements. And so I kind of had a lesson with everybody, and I
Right.
sort of uh, had this moment where I was in a coaching with Kevin Murphy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Kevin Murphy um,
Just across the
asked
hall,
me,
I can see his office from my desk.
there you go. There you go. He started encouraging. He was like, "Well, yeah, it just sounds to me like you're not really finding. We talk about singing on the breath or with the
Right.
breath, and he's
Sure.
like, I just don't hear you singing on the breath." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not trying not to. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
Sure.
so all these
Sure.
discoveries, right?" And
Yeah.
so, for me, it was him just sort of showing me a little exercise of how to find or demonstrate the closure of the chords, which is so easy, right? It's just huh, huh,
Right.
right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I immediately feel the appoggio in the lower torso. I immediately feel like there's resistance to the breath. And he's like, yeah, he's like, we were in a coaching. So he was like, there's a lot to get into right now about that. And he's like, but you're in Houston. You should go take a lesson with Stephen King.
There
And
you go.
so
Yeah.
I went down and had a lesson, and he goes, yeah, it just sounds like you're blowing air through a mesh screen. And I go, that's
Mm.
exactly what it feels like I'm doing. So I knew I was with the right person because he
Sure.
immediately was able to sort of uncover this. And he was like, yeah, you just need to get some closure in the chords and find some resistance to that breath that you're using.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's now been my teacher for the last 16 years, I guess, 15 years.
Yeah.
And over the course of that, we've definitely been able to find how to create that resistance to the breath, how to keep and maintain closure in the chords without building up subglottic pressure, and to keep that appoggio low in the torso so that that's what's doing the work and that this stays free. But, I think over time, what you start to discover, with all these different interests of like me as a teacher, but also as a singer, and finding out how I can help my own students while helping myself is
Right.
through knowledge. And that's essentially what we're encouraging, is to give people the opportunity to teach, for you to learn. And, while you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, I think
Yeah.
it's important that you trust the people around you and seek out the knowledge that that might be at your disposal.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything that you just said. That every time that I switch teachers, because I had a very, I've loved all of my teachers who I've had, and out of loyalty, I stayed with them probably longer than I should have. But
Mm,
we all make our decisions.
yeah, sure.
But when the business, or when people, like you're saying, like I remember it was when I was with my teacher for undergrad, who I then studied with for another 3 to 4 years. The Met was who had I'd made it to the finals of the competition, the grand finals, and so I could go back and sing for educational funds. And the feedback would be like, we think that you really just need you need a different opinion.
Hmm.
If you keep singing the way, I never forget this. If you keep singing the way you're singing, you're going to be a comprimario tenor,
Hmm.
and we hear leading tenor potential in your voice.
Hmm.
It's just too forward, is in my nose, masky.
Yeah.
Then the same woman, 3 years after, she helped me switch actually to Steve Smith. And then she also said later, like, well, I understand that you found some wonderful muscle tension release. And it's great, but you also have kind of lost what your calling card was, which was your kind of squealo
Hmm.
trumpety quality.
Hmm.
And that was also hard to hear.
Hmm.
Because I thought, I mean, I was making progress, but the problem, or not the problem, but the issue with Steve was just so busy and teaching so many lessons that I could only get with him every other week.
Hmm.
And after 2 years of doing every other week, and then inevitably, the weather gets cold and you get sick, or he gets sick, and then you've just
Yeah.
lost your lesson. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
now I have one lesson a month. This is not going, this is not
Well, and
working,
and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but I mean,
Yeah.
Stephen Smith always used to say, the technique that I teach is not necessarily what I think the industry wants. I'm
Right.
just teaching the healthiest technique that I
Healthiest.
can
Yeah.
teach. And so sometimes, we would like for those things to align, but
Right.
sometimes, the things that you might
Sure.
need in that moment are not necessarily the things that the industry or the business needs for you to need to have. You know what I mean? It's so. I don't know. It's such a complex sort of navigating of this journey, as we find the right coaches and the right teachers. I mean, my gosh, when I was a student at the Juilliard School, we had access to like a billion different coaches, all the coaches at the Met, and then all the ones that were on staff at Juilliard, which were plentiful. Let's just say that.
Sure.
And so you're like, okay, I'm working on French repertoire, so I guess I should coach with Tom Grubb or Denise Massé or Nico Castel. Well, then you have this coachings with them on the same aria. You figure out pretty quick which one you click with. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so it is sort of like, again, figuring out how can I glean as much knowledge as I can from all these amazing masters of their craft, that are there, whether it's a teacher or a manager or a coach. But again, finding who clicks with you the best in the right way, that then you see this external advancement in what you're pursuing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, bud. Thanks so much for this. It's been a great pleasure to kind of dig into these segues and bridges between things and kind of
Yeah. And just as a reminder
self-reflect.
for
Yeah.
people who are listening to this, if we didn't happen to mention something that you're dealing with, please write in, make a comment on the
Yeah.
thing and we'll answer your questions, maybe even do a little mini episode to answer those questions. So if you're trying to figure out for yourself what it is that you're, struggling with, let us know.
All right. Sounds good. See you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us on Season 2 of Between the Notes podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe to our videos, and we will see you next time.